My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 34 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the ghost standing next to my brother's spotlight. At every dinner, every holiday, every toast, my parents' eyes would shine for Brandon the golden son while mine slid right past. Like I was furniture. Last Thanksgiving, he raised a glass, bragging about his company's new $3 million funding round. My mom actually teared up. My dad called him our family's pride. I smiled, swallowed the acid in my throat, and said nothing. But what they didn't know was that the investor who wrote that check was me. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by your own family. The kind of betrayal that doesn't come with knives or shouting, just quiet smiles, empty praise, and the sound of your name never being good enough. I grew up in a small yellow house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in San Diego, where the lawn was always trimmed to perfection and my father's rules hung heavier than the air. My brother, Brandon, 3 years older, was the kind of kid adults adored: instantly perfect posture, perfect hair, perfect smile. He learned early how to charm a room. I learned how to disappear in one. Every morning before school, Mom would pack our lunches, two identical brown paper bags, but only one got a post-it note with a heart drawn on it. Brandon's. She'd slip it in with a smile, whispering, "Good luck, sweetheart." I'd stand behind him, waiting, pretending not to notice when she forgot mine again. At dinner, Dad would ask Brandon about his grades, his sports, his future. "Straight A's again?" He'd say proudly. Then his eyes would flick to me. "You try harder this semester, son. You've got potential if you just focus." That word potential became my prison. It meant not enough yet. The first time I realized how deep the favoritism ran was when I was 12. Brandon broke the side mirror off Dad's car while racing his bike down the driveway. The crash echoed through the neighborhood. When Dad came storming out, Brandon froze, tears in his eyes. I opened my mouth to explain what happened, but Dad's glare turned on me. "Ethan, you were supposed to watch your brother." I remember staring at him, stunned. But I didn't. Enough. His voice was final. That night, I sat outside in the cold while Brandon ate dessert inside. I could still hear them laughing through the kitchen window. I didn't know it then, but that moment carved something permanent into me: this understanding that in our house, truth didn't matter, narrative did. By high school, Brandon was the star of everything: debate team captain, prom committee, varsity soccer. His trophies lined the hallway like a shrine. Mine, one tiny third-place medal from a regional coding contest, sat crooked on a bookshelf in my room. Mom dusted his shelf every weekend. She never touched mine. When I got accepted to a small state university for computer science, my parents congratulated me, but when Brandon got into an Ivy League business program, they threw a barbecue. Neighbors came, banners hung, and Dad gave a speech about raising leaders. During his toast, he said, "Brandon's going places. And Ethan, well, he's still finding his path." Everyone laughed politely. I smiled and swallowed that, too. College was my first taste of freedom. For the first time, I wasn't Brandon's brother. I was just Ethan. I got a part-time job fixing websites for local cafes, small businesses, anyone who'd pay in cash or pizza. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt mine. I stayed up late in dim dorm rooms, the hum of my cheap laptop fan blending with the sound of rain on the window, building something from nothing. By 22, I landed my first freelance project that actually paid: designing a website for a local coffee shop called Mocha Sunday. When it went live, the owner hugged me, said business had doubled. That night, I called my parents, proud, stupidly hoping maybe this time they'd see me. Mom answered, "Oh, honey, that's great," she said, distracted. Then I heard laughter in the background: Brandon's voice. "What's going on?" I asked. "Oh, your brother just got accepted into Columbia's MBA. Can you believe it?" she said, voice glowing. My stomach sank. "Wow," I said softly. "That's amazing." She didn't notice the silence that followed. I didn't know it then, but that phone call was the blueprint for our entire adulthood. His victories erased mine. Over the next few years, Brandon climbed fast: internships, corporate jobs, magazine features about young entrepreneurs. He loved being seen. I loved not being underestimated. So I built quietly. By 27, I co-founded a small UX startup with two friends, Novagrid. We worked out of a damp basement in downtown San Diego that smelled like old carpet and burnt coffee, surviving on ramen and caffeine. It was chaos, but it was honest. Our first investor told us we'd never make it past 6 months. We made it 4 years. Then, one morning, a European tech firm acquired us for a modest sum enough to buy peace, not fame. I walked out of that deal with financial freedom for the first time. My co-founders celebrated. I just sat in my apartment, staring at the contract, thinking of all the times I'd been told to catch up. I could have bragged. I could have posted about it, sent the article to my parents, or bought something flashy. But I didn't. I wanted to know who people were when they thought I had nothing to offer. So I went quiet. I started Northbridge Capital, an anonymous holding company, investing in struggling startups with potential, but no direction companies that reminded me of who I used to be. It was my way of helping others the way no one had helped me. Then came Brandon's company, FluxPath. At first, I didn't even realize it was his. My analyst sent over a list of startups looking for emergency bridge funding. FluxPath was on it, numbers red, burn rate dangerous, but product promising. I looked closer, saw the founder's name, and froze. Brandon Cole. My first instinct was to delete the file, but then I remembered all the dinner conversations. The laughter, the way Dad said, "Learn from your brother." Maybe I wanted to see what happened when the pedestal cracked. So I funded it quietly, indirectly through Northbridge. I bought out a few tired angels, injected enough cash to save the company, and in the process, ended up with 61% ownership. Brandon had no idea. I didn't do it to hurt him. I did it to see him without the safety net. When the deal closed, I sat alone in my office, the late sunlight cutting sharp lines across the floor. Outside, traffic hummed. Inside, everything felt still. I told myself this wasn't revenge. It was an experiment. And yet, somewhere deep down, I knew better. The night Brandon announced his big funding round was supposed to be a celebration. Dad opened a 1-2-year-old bottle of scotch. Mom set the table with her best dishes, the ones wrapped in tissue paper since my grandmother's passing. The air smelled like roasted garlic and overcooked steak. When I walked in, Brandon was already there. Perfect suit, perfect grin, a glass raised like a trophy. "Look who finally made it," he said, half laughing. The mysterious freelancer himself. I sat down, still wearing my gray hoodie and sneakers. Mom leaned across the table, eyes glowing. "Ethan, you won't believe it. Brandon's company just closed a $3.2 million funding deal. Isn't that incredible?" I nodded. "Yeah, that's great." Brandon smirked. "Investors love confidence. You can't build anything real if you play small." He didn't know the irony of that line. He didn't know that the cold investor he was bragging about meeting through his board was me, sitting across the table, holding a cheap wine glass from Target. My father clapped Brandon on the shoulder. "That's what I'm talking about. Taking charge, being a man." Then, to me, softer, but not kind, "You could learn a thing or two from him." I smiled and said nothing. I'd learned something. All right, silence has gravity. The moment felt familiar. The same pattern, same tone, same cold air after every compliment not meant for me. The only thing different now was that I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my own empire, quiet, invisible, bulletproof. Still, when Mom laughed and said, "Maybe Ethan can help your company someday," something inside me tightened. Brandon chuckled. "Yeah, sure. Maybe he can do our website. Freelancers are good at that." Everyone laughed. I didn't. That was the night I realized I'd never get a fair rewrite in this family. So instead, I controlled the story behind the scenes. I went home, poured myself a drink, and opened my laptop. The numbers for FluxPath were worse than I'd thought. Runway less than 5 months, spending obscene on team retreats and executive travel. But the product had real potential. It wasn't a disaster yet. I funded the bridge round quietly. My lawyer, Julian Park, arranged everything through a shell entity. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. "He'll never know it's you." "That's the point," I said. "I'm not trying to be a savior. But even saviors can have motives darker than mercy." Over the next few months, FluxPath stabilized. Employees got paid. Product releases rolled out again. The board applauded Brandon's leadership comeback. He soaked in the praise. I stayed in the background, pulling strings no one saw. Sometimes, I'd sit in investor meetings under another name. Camera off, listening to Brandon talk about his vision. His words were polished, his confidence magnetic. But underneath it, I could hear it the cracks. The bluff. The man who never learned the difference between charisma and competence. And then, just like that, history began to repeat itself. Mom called one evening. "Your brother's home for dinner this weekend. Come, honey. It's been too long." I almost said no. But curiosity, familiar and dangerous one. When I arrived, Brandon was already seated at the head of the table. Of course, he stood, arms open. "Ethan, still breathing, huh?" He joked, hugging me with one arm. "Barely," I said dryly. Mom placed a bowl of roasted potatoes in front of us. "Brandon's got wonderful news again." Brandon grinned, the kind of grin that dared the room to keep up. "We're expanding internationally," he said. "London first, then Singapore." Dad raised his glass. "That's my boy." Mom turned to me. "Maybe you can help him out. You both work in tech, right?" Brandon laughed. "Mom, please. No offense, but this isn't a garage project." The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the chandelier light felt heavy. "None taken," I said quietly. He smirked. "Good. I wouldn't want to hurt your feelings." The conversation moved on. I sat still, tasting iron in my mouth. Then something unexpected happened. Brandon mentioned his investors, how demanding they'd become, how they were ruining the vision. He described his anonymous controlling shareholder as the devil himself. "They've been tightening budgets, pushing for transparency, acting like they own me," he said bitterly. I took a slow sip of wine. "Technically, they do." He shot me a glare. "You sound just like them." Dad frowned. "Can't you do something, son? It's your company." Brandon sighed dramatically. "I'm trying, but these people have no idea how startups work. They're just money suits who think spreadsheets build innovation." Mom shook her head in sympathy. "Those investors sound awful." I smiled faintly. "Maybe they're just doing their job." Brandon leaned forward. "You defending them?" "I'm just saying," I said evenly. "Transparency isn't a bad thing." He rolled his eyes. "You wouldn't understand." Maybe he was right. I'd spent years building in silence while he built illusions in neon. But that night, hearing him rage about me without knowing it, something inside me shifted again. Not anger, not pride, just a quiet recognition he'd never seen me. Not once. Not really. A few days later, Mom called again. "Sweetheart, Brandon mentioned you didn't seem excited about his offer to work with him. Don't let pride get in the way. He's trying to help." I nearly laughed. "Mom, I'm fine." "Ethan," she said softly, "your brother's just looking out for you. You could learn from him." That line, "learn from him," felt like déjà vu. When Dad got on the phone, his voice was steel. "Son, he's extending a hand. Don't slap it away." "I'm not." "Then take it." "I already have a career, Dad." He scoffed. "Freelancing isn't a career. You need stability." "So did you. When you were my age," I said quietly. Silence. "Then, if you say so." That was how my family functioned. Brandon's word was truth. Mine was theory. I hung up, stared at the ceiling, and realized there was no winning this argument. Not with words. Not with logic. Only with time and evidence. Weeks passed. Brandon's behavior at Flux Path worsened. Reports from Samira, the CFO I discreetly installed, painted an ugly picture. Missing budgets, bloated spending, ego-driven decisions. "He's killing the company," she said over the phone. "I know," I replied. "Just keep the receipts." Meanwhile, Brandon's temper reached the dinner table. He'd snap at Dad for questioning him, scoff at Mom's attempts to soothe him. The pedestal was wobbling, but they refused to see it tilt. At one of those dinners, he turned to me suddenly. "You think it's funny, don't you? Watching me struggle." "Why would I?" "Because you've always hated that I'm successful." Mom intervened, panicked. "Brandon, stop." But I just looked at him, calm. "You're imagining things." He slammed his glass down. "Whatever. Some of us have real problems." He stormed out. The door slammed so hard the plates rattled. Mom's eyes shimmered with tears. Dad muttered, "He's under pressure." I smiled faintly. "Yeah, I bet he is." They didn't understand that the storm wasn't coming. It had already begun. I didn't know then that the truth, once it surfaced, would destroy the version of our family we'd been pretending to be. The first headline hit like a sucker punch. Rising star CEO Brandon Cole secures next round for FluxPath. The photo showed him in a navy suit, hand on a microphone. Charisma turned up to 11. I knew the truth. The new money wasn't a new round at all. It was my bridge capital, rebranded for vanity. I sat in my office that morning, the blinds half closed, coffee gone cold. Across the desk, Ava scrolled through her iPad. "Do you want me to issue a correction?" she asked. "No," I said. "Let him have his headline." I wanted to see how far he'd ride the lie before gravity kicked in. 2 weeks later, the board meeting confirmed it. FluxPath's numbers were a slow-motion car crash. CFO Samira Khan had charts spread across the table: burn rate, cash flow, travel spending. She tapped a red bar. "This," she said, "is Cabo." Cabo? An off-site leadership retreat. 28 grand on flights. 4 nights at the Solara Resort. Brandon logged it as team alignment. I felt my jaw tighten. Was there a team? Just him and his girlfriend. The room fell silent except for the hum of the projector. Linda Hart, board chair, leaned forward. "We can't keep covering for this." I met her eyes. "We won't." When the meeting ended, I lingered by the window, watching traffic move below like veins. Samira packed her files. "You sure you don't want to go public with this?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "He'll hang himself faster if we don't cut the rope." But Brandon wasn't done performing. Within a week, he was on Maya Stone's startup podcast, talking about toxic investors who suffocate founders. He never used my name, but every sentence pointed straight at me. Maya laughed sympathetically. "Sounds like you're fighting sharks in suits." He sighed dramatically. "Yeah. Some investors pretend to help, but they're just power hungry." I trusted the wrong people. I listened to the episode alone at midnight, light from my laptop flickering on the wall. My chest felt hollow, not from anger, but from recognition he'd weaponized the one thing I'd protected all my life: silence. The next morning, Mom called. "Sweetheart," she said carefully, "your brother's interview was so moving. He's been through so much pressure." "Pressure?" I repeated. She hesitated. "He said his investors were impossible to work with." "You're in that world, can't you?" "I don't know. Talk to them?" I swallowed a bitter laugh. "I already do, Mom. Every day." That week, Brandon texted me out of nowhere. "Heard you've got friends in tech finance. Any idea who's behind this Northbridge group? They're trying to control me." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Sounds rough. Hope you figure it out." He never responded. But the storm kept building. Rumors spread through our old network: whispers that Brandon was the genius betrayed by a ruthless investor. I started getting polite, probing calls from former colleagues. "Hey Ethan, between us, is it true you're involved with FluxPath?" I'd answer the same way every time. "I can't comment on confidential holdings." One night, Dad called. His tone carried the weight of authority sharpened by whiskey. "Son, I'm gonna be straight with you," he said. "Your brother's drowning. He needs help. You have the means, why let him sink?" I leaned back in my chair. "He's not sinking, Dad. He's digging." "Don't be cold," he snapped. "Family doesn't keep score." "Funny," I said quietly. "That's all we ever did." The silence on the line was long and heavy. "Finally," he muttered, "you always were too proud." Then the call ended. That sentence echoed for days. Too proud. It was the same line he used when I was 16, after I refused to take the blame for another one of Brandon's messes. Pride was my sin. Loyalty was Brandon's mask. Meanwhile, Ava found something. She slid a folder onto my desk. "This came through an anonymous tip," she said. Inside were copies of invoices, luxury car leases, designer clothes, personal credit cards, billed to FluxPath. "Jesus," I muttered. "He's not even hiding it." Ava crossed her arms. "Do you want me to leak this?" I shook my head. "No, not yet. Truth, I'd learned, tastes better when it's served at the perfect temperature: cold, undeniable, and timed for maximum clarity." The pressure around FluxPath tightened like a noose. Brandon's staff started leaking, whispers missed payrolls, layoffs disguised as restructuring, temper tantrums behind glass doors. My inbox filled with quiet warnings from board members who no longer trusted him. By midsummer, Linda Hart finally called it what it was. "We're moving to forensic audit," she said flatly over speakerphone. "If he's clean, he'll survive. If not, well, the numbers will speak." I stared at the city lights outside my window. Do it. The next week, the audit team walked in unannounced. Brandon exploded. He called me that night, his voice shaking with fury. You think this is funny? What are you talking about? I said. You're behind this. You and your bored witch hunt. You couldn't build what I built, so now you're trying to destroy it. I stayed calm. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. He laughed, sharp and bitter. You sound just like them. Then he hung up. Hours later, an email arrived from an untraceable address. You'll regret this. Ava found it first. You want me to trace it? No, I said. I already know who sent it. The next few weeks blurred into headlines and half-truths. Brandon spun a news story for anyone who'd listen. The genius founder victimized by a faceless investor. He gave interviews in dimly lit studios, talking about betrayal, about losing control to corporate vultures. The public loved him. The flawed hero narrative always sells. Mom called after one of those interviews aired. Her voice trembled. He's hurting, Ethan. Can't you just let it go? Let what go? This feud. It's tearing us apart. I closed my eyes. Mom, there's no feud. There's accountability. She sighed. You sound so cold lately. I almost said, you made me this way, but swallowed it. Dad wasn't any better. When I visited for Sunday dinner, he cornered me in the driveway. The smell of motor oil and cut grass filled the air. He's still your brother, he said quietly. I know. Then act like it. Fix this before he destroys himself. I met his eyes. I can't fix what he keeps breaking. He shook his head. You always think you're the smartest guy in the room. Maybe I was tired of trying to prove otherwise. Inside, Mom set the table with 4 plates, like nothing had changed. Brandon arrived late, red-eyed but smiling, charisma still intact. He hugged Mom, nodded at Dad, and barely looked at me. Through the meal he played his part, the misunderstood visionary. Mom laughed at every story. Dad asked cautious questions. I listened in silence, cataloging every lie he told. Halfway through dessert, he dropped his latest grenade. I've decided to buy back the controlling stake, he said casually. Already talking to legal. Dad's eyes brightened. That's great news, son. I raised a brow. And how exactly will you fund that? He smirked. I've got options. People believe in me. People, or your girlfriend's credit line. His grin vanished. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I do. I said evenly. You're drowning, Brandon. Stop pretending you're surfing. He stood abruptly. You think you're better than me because you've got money now? Mom gasped. Please. Both of you. I didn't raise my voice. No. I just learned when to stop lying to myself. He stared at me, chest rising and falling fast. Then he laughed a hollow, breaking sound and walked out without another word. That night, Samira called. Audit's complete, she said. You'll want to see this in person. The file landed in my inbox an hour later. Pages of misuse, luxury cars, phantom agencies, personal vacations coded as marketing. It was enough to end him professionally. I could have leaked it right then. But something stopped me. Not mercy strategy. Instead, I told Julian to prepare everything quietly. No press, I said. When the truth comes out, it comes from us, not tabloids. A week later, I got another surprise: an internal memo leaked to the media, accusing the Northbridge Investor Group of unethical conduct. Anonymous source, of course. Ava traced the upload to one of Brandon's former assistants. Payment routed through a dummy account. He's using dirty tricks now, Ava said. Then we match precision with precision. I answered. I leaned back, watching the city through glass, lights flickering like slow fire. For years, I'd let him control the story. But stories only hold power until the facts arrive. And my facts were ready. The audit, the receipts, the emails, the truth. All of it waiting for the perfect stage: our parents' 40th anniversary dinner. That night would be the point of no return. He just didn't know it yet. The restaurant glowed in candlelight, white linen, crystal glasses, a soft hum of jazz that didn't belong to families on the verge of implosion. I arrived right on time. My suit was dark navy, pressed, precise. I wasn't here to win. I was here to end something. Mom and Dad were already seated near the window, her pearls catching the light, his tie too tight for comfort. Ethan, Mom said with that hopeful smile she used like a bandage. You look wonderful. Thanks, Mom. You both do. The air smelled of steak and red wine. Beneath it, tension. Then Brandon arrived. Still handsome in a way that photographs well, still carrying that effortless arrogance that once fooled everyone. His hair was slicked back, but his eyes were red, tired, reckless. He greeted my parents warmly, then turned to me with a crooked grin. Well, if it isn't the silent investor himself. I smiled faintly. Evening, Brandon. We shook hands. His grip was hard showmanship, not strength. The first half hour passed with small talk and forced laughter. Mom told stories about old holidays. Dad tried to act normal. But Brandon's restlessness bled through every pause. He kept swirling his glass, glancing at me like he was rehearsing a punchline. When the entrees arrived, he dropped it. So, Ethan, he said, voice loud enough to cut through the jazz. I've been thinking about you lately. Mom looked up. That's nice, honey. He smirked. Yeah, about how someone like you can hide so much dirt under a clean shirt. The table froze. I set my fork down. Excuse me? He leaned back, savoring the moment. You act like the saint of silence, but people talk. Turns out Northbridge isn't as spotless as you pretend. I've got evidence, contracts, payments, offshore transfers. Should I go on? Dad's face hardened. Brandon, not here. Brandon ignored him, his eyes locked on me. You think you can buy control, humiliate me, then sit there like a damn martyr? You're not innocent, Ethan. You're a fraud hiding behind paperwork. I didn't blink. Instead, I reached into my jacket and placed a slim black folder on the table. Its surface caught the light like a loaded weapon. That's fascinating, I said quietly, because I've got a few documents too. He laughed nervously. What? Another one of your legal traps? I slid the folder toward him. Go ahead. Open it. He hesitated, then flipped it open and stopped breathing. Inside were forensic audit reports, emails, wire transfers, expense logs. Highlighted lines told a story of theft. Company funds spent on personal luxuries, travel receipts from Cabo, invoices for phantom marketing agencies. A single signature repeated across every page. His. Mom's voice cracked. Brandon, what is this? He looked at her, then at me, face pale. You set me up. No, I said. You set yourself up. I just kept the receipts. He slammed the folder shut. You manipulated the board. I leaned forward, voice calm, cold. You were about to bankrupt your company. I bought controlling interest to stop you from dragging others down. You didn't lose FluxPath because of me. You lost it because you treated it like your personal ATM. Dad's hand gripped his glass so tightly it trembled. Is this true? I turned to him. You wanted proof, Dad. There it is. Brandon's mask cracked. He stood abruptly, chair scraping the marble. You think you're better than me? You were nothing until I showed you how to hustle. I stood too, but my voice stayed low. You showed me what not to become. He laughed a short, broken sound. You'll regret this. Already did, I said. The restaurant had gone silent now. Diners stared over their wine glasses, forks hovering midair. Somewhere, a waiter froze mid-step. Mom's eyes brimmed with tears. Stop, please. Both of you. But it was too late. Brandon shoved the folder off the table. Papers spilled like feathers across the floor. Then his voice dropped, almost whispering. You think you won? No, I said softly. I stopped losing. That's when Ava's scheduled email hit. My phone buzzed. Mom's too. Dad's. Brandon's. Subject line. For the record. It was an attached thread proof of the assistant he'd paid to leak false stories, the podcast payments, the anonymous posts defaming me. The timing was exact 8 p.m. sharp. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad stared at his screen, color draining from his face. Brandon's voice cracked. You hacked me. I shook my head. No, you taught me how predictable you are. He turned to our parents. You believe him? After everything? Dad's voice came out low, steady, final. I don't need to believe. I can read. For a long moment, Brandon stood there frozen between fury and fear. Then he pushed his chair back and stormed out. The echo of the door slamming was louder than any shout could have been. Mom was crying quietly. Dad just stared at the scattered papers. I gathered them gently, stacked them back into the folder, and said, I didn't come here to humiliate him. I came here to end the lies. Mom looked up, eyes wet. Why didn't you tell us sooner? I met her gaze. Would you have believed me? Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. I turned to leave, then paused by her shoulder. Mom, I said softly, the mortgage is safe. The house, you won't lose it. She blinked, confused. I found the loan Brandon took out against it 6 months ago. I explained quietly. I paid it off through Northbridge. You didn't know because I didn't want you to. Her hand flew to her mouth again. Ethan. I smiled faintly. Happy anniversary. I walked out before either of them could speak. Outside, the night was cool, the city lights sharp as glass. Behind me, the laughter inside the restaurant sounded muffled and wrong, like a recording from another life. I got in my car, started the engine, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the shadow at someone else's table. I felt free. 2 weeks after the dinner, silence replaced the chaos. No calls, no texts, not even a rumor. For a family that once measured love through noise, quiet was its own kind of earthquake. Mom eventually sent a short message. We need time. Please understand. Dad didn't write at all. But I wasn't angry. For the first time, I didn't need them to see me. The truth had already spoken louder than I ever could. FluxPath's audit results went public the following month. The findings were devastating. Falsified expenses, misused funds, fabricated client lists. The board voted unanimously to remove Brandon from all executive positions. He tried to rally sympathy online, posted a long thread about family betrayal and corporate greed. But sympathy fades fast when receipts exist. Linda Hart handled the press with surgical precision. The company has undergone internal restructuring, she said. Leadership changes were necessary to protect shareholders. No drama, no names, just facts. And that was enough to erase him. Still, I didn't push for criminal charges. Julian, my lawyer, advised we could. Misappropriation is prosecutable, he reminded me. I know, I said, but I'm not here to bury him. I'm here to stop bleeding. He nodded slowly. Then I'll finalize the non-disparagement clause. We sent the agreement to Brandon the same night. He signed within 24 hours, desperation disguised as pride. The clause meant he couldn't speak publicly about the company, the board, or me. It also included one final condition. If violated, full legal exposure would resume. For a while, I thought that was the end. Until Ava walked into my office one morning, her face pale. Ethan, you should see this. She turned her laptop toward me. On the screen was a new anonymous account posting threads about an investor who ruined his own brother. The phrasing was familiar, too familiar. I exhaled slowly. He broke the clause. Ava frowned. You want to sue? No, I said after a pause. Send him something instead. I drafted the email myself. No threats. No lawyers. Just a single attachment titled Career Reset. Inside, contact lists for debt advisors, mental health counselors, career coaches, the same help he never offered anyone else. No signature. No message. Only silence. Because the cleanest revenge isn't destruction. It's standing tall enough that their noise can't reach you anymore. If you've ever been the quiet one, the forgotten one, you think that was bad? Wait until you hear what happened in the next story, where the quiet one didn't just fight back. He changed everything. My name is Nathan Miller. I'm 41 years old, and on my birthday my family threw a party at my lake house without me. That morning, sunlight spilled across a half-empty kitchen table. Cold coffee, one folded napkin, the faint smell of Sienna's perfume fading near the door. My phone lay face down. Silent. No happy birthday. No noise. Just the hum of the fridge and the creak of the floor when I finally moved. Out of habit, I scrolled anyway. The first thing that hit me wasn't a message, it was a photo. My wife, my brother, my parents. Even my kids laughing under a banner that read, "Here's to new beginnings." And the caption below it, "He's used to being in the background anyway." But what they didn't know was that the background was about to move. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because what happened next isn't just a story about a birthday gone wrong. It's about what silence can do when you've been underestimated for too long, and how one quiet man decided to end it, once and for all. When people ask about my childhood, I usually tell them it was fine. That's the polite version. The truth is, it was the kind of fine that leaves marks you can't see. I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, in a one-story house that smelled like engine oil and lemon cleaner. My dad, Harold, worked at an auto shop, always came home with grease on his hands and beer on his breath. Mom, Margaret, ruled the house with a wooden spoon and a voice that could slice through drywall. And then there was Ryan, my younger brother by 5 years, the golden boy. Even when we were kids, the rules bent around him like gravity. He could crash a bike, lie about it, and somehow I'd end up grounded. Once, he shattered the neighbor's car mirror with a baseball. Dad called me into the garage, handed me a rag, and said, "Go apologize and clean it up. You're the older one, you should have been watching him." That line followed me for decades. You're the older one. I still remember that summer day. The air smelled like gasoline and cut grass. Ryan was sitting on the porch steps eating a popsicle while I was polishing chrome that wasn't mine. He waved at me like nothing happened. That's when I learned that fairness isn't guaranteed, it's negotiated. And I was terrible at negotiating. High school didn't change much. Ryan had the charm, I had the grades. Guess which one people remembered? At my senior awards ceremony, when they called my name for outstanding technical achievement, my parents clapped politely. But when Ryan cracked a joke from the back row that made everyone laugh, Mom's face lit up like he'd won something too. Later that night, we stopped for burgers. I sat across from them, holding the certificate like it meant something. Dad leaned back, smirked, and said, "You'll make a solid worker someday, Nate. Not everyone's meant to be a star like your brother." Ryan winked at me over his fries. "Don't worry, big bro. When I make it big, I'll hire you." I smiled, pretended it was funny, and swallowed the burn of ketchup that suddenly tasted like rust. I didn't know it back then, but that was the first time I promised myself I'd never owe Ryan anything. Fast forward a few years. I was 19, working part-time construction, while taking community college classes. Dad came by one night with that "I need a favor" tone. "Son," he said, "your brother needs to start building credit. We'll use your social security number to help him get a card. I'll cancel it in a month." I didn't even understand what that meant. Not really. But I said yes, because saying no in our house was a sin. That single favor would come back to haunt me 20 years later. In my 20s, I started Miller and Sons. The Sons part was a dream. I didn't have kids yet, but I imagined passing something down. I worked 18-hour days, slept on site more than at home. When I finally opened my first office, a small, metal building with a flickering fluorescent light, I called my parents. "Can you come by? I'd love for you to see it," I said. Mom hesitated. "Oh, honey, that's today? We're driving up to Seattle. Ryan's pitching his new startup. He's so nervous." I hung up before she could finish. That flickering light hummed like a taunt. I remember thinking, maybe if I just work harder, they'll see me. That was the lie I kept feeding myself. That effort could fix love. Then came Sienna. I met her on a remodel job downtown. She was a young designer with sharp eyes, coffee in one hand, blueprints in the other. She talked fast, laughed easy, and had this way of making every space feel alive. I was quieter, practical, the guy who measured twice and spoke once. "You're different," she told me one night when we were closing up. "You listen when no one else does." That's how it started, with being heard for once. We moved in together within a year. The apartment was small, the rent late half the time, but I'd never felt richer. On rainy nights, she'd sketch by the window while I fixed broken lamps. And we'd talk about building something lasting. I told her I wanted a house by the water, one day, not a mansion, just a place where our kids could grow up without noise. She smiled, pressed her head against my shoulder. "You and your quiet dreams," she said. "They're beautiful." We got married a year later. Ryan gave a toast at the reception, half compliment, half insult. "To Nathan," he said, raising his glass, "the most reliable man I know. The kind of guy who'll fix your roof, lend you money, and never ask for it back." The crowd laughed. Even Sienna laughed. I told myself it was harmless. That's what good men do. We minimize our own pain, so everyone else feels comfortable. But pain doesn't disappear. It stores itself in the walls, in the tone of your wife's sigh, in the way your mother still calls your brother, "our wild one," like it's a badge of honor. By my mid-30s, the cracks were showing. I'd built the business into something steady: 2 trucks, 5 employees, regular contracts. We weren't rich, but we were stable. And stability, I thought, was love in motion. Sienna started rolling her eyes when I said that. "You're obsessed with predictability," she'd tell me. "Life isn't a spreadsheet, Nate." She wanted trips, surprises, Stories that looked good on her Instagram feed. I wanted peace, consistency, home-cooked dinners with the kids. Somewhere in between, we stopped speaking the same language. One night, after another argument about her working late with clients, she threw her hands up. Ryan knows how to live a little. Maybe you should take notes. She said it casually, but the name landed like a hammer. I didn't yell. I just nodded, went to bed, and stared at the ceiling while she typed on her phone beside me. Her screen glowed blue on her face, like moonlight. I couldn't see what she was writing, but I could feel the distance growing silent, invisible, thick as fog. I didn't know it then, but that fog was already wrapping around my marriage, tightening slow. The years after that fight blurred into routine, the kind that looks fine from the outside. We had two kids, Emily and Noah, a house in the suburbs, and a calendar full of things that meant nothing. Parent-teacher meetings, weekend soccer games, dinner with my parents every other Sunday. From a distance, it looked like success. Up close, it felt like suffocation. I'd wake up at 5, pour black coffee, and stare at the kitchen clock while the house slept. That hour was the only time I heard silence that wasn't heavy. The rest of the day was noise, construction sites, phone calls, invoices. Sienna's sighs about living small. Ryan would swing by sometimes, wearing a new watch or driving a different car each visit. He'd slap my back and say things like, "Still grinding, huh? Man, I could never do that. You gotta let loose." He called my work ethic cute, like it was a personality flaw. My parents loved it when he came over. Mom would beam, Dad would pour him a drink, and they'd all laugh about Ryan's next big thing. One night, Mom looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You could help him, Nate. He just needs a little investment to get the business off the ground." I put my fork down. I've already helped him. Her smile didn't falter. "You're the big brother. You'll always have more sense. That's your gift." It wasn't a gift. It was a sentence. That Christmas, we hosted at our house. Snow outside, lights glowing soft along the porch. Emily and Noah racing around with wrapping paper like confetti. I bought my parents a new flat-screen TV. Their old one was half static, and Ryan gave them plane tickets to Vegas. Guess which one they talked about for the rest of the night? Sienna looked perfect that evening. She always did. Silk dress, hair pinned just so, glass of white wine in hand. She laughed a little too loud at Ryan's stories. The ones where he was always the hero, the rescuer, the man who got away with everything. At one point, I caught her hand resting on the back of his chair. Not romantic, maybe not even intentional, but long enough for me to notice. Long enough to feel something break. After everyone left, I started cleaning up. She came into the kitchen barefoot, wine glass half full. "You're quiet," she said. I shrugged. "You seem to be having fun." She smiled faintly. "Ryan's easy to talk to. You get so serious sometimes." "Someone has to be," I said. She rolled her eyes, took a sip, and walked upstairs without another word. That was our rhythm. Her disappearing, me holding the silence. A year later, I bought the lake house Mirror Point. I told Sienna it was for the kids, a place to unplug. She called it a project, said it was too far from the city. But when I took her there the first time, she couldn't stop taking pictures. The cedar deck glowed golden in the afternoon sun. The lake reflected the sky like glass. And for a moment, we felt almost real again. "This place has potential," she said, turning slowly in the main room. "It could be something more." I smiled. "Like what?" She shrugged. "Maybe a business. Maybe just a view." I didn't know she meant both. Ben, the caretaker, was a quiet man who spoke like every word had to earn its way out. I liked that about him. He handed me the keys and said, "Keep the master code safe. Folks around here trust locks more than people." I thought he was being poetic. I didn't realize he was giving me a warning. That year, my business took off. Miller and Sons started handling larger contracts, waterfront builds, full restorations. I barely had time to breathe, let alone notice the small things changing at home. Sienna's weekend design retreats. The new friends she made from client work. The way my parents stopped asking about me and only mentioned Ryan's new venture. Then came that spring. We were sitting in the living room when she mentioned it casually. "Ryan's thinking about launching something new, luxury lake rentals. I told him he should talk to you." I laughed. "He's never run a real business in his life." She tilted her head, smiling. "Everyone starts somewhere, Nate." I didn't realize she'd already started for him. The months leading up to my birthday were a blur of half-truths and late nights. She'd come home smelling like champagne and lake water, claiming she'd been working on a design pitch. The kids whispered whenever I walked into a room, and when I asked what was funny, they'd exchange that look the one teenagers give when they know something you don't. 2 weeks before my birthday, Sienna touched my arm while we were brushing our teeth. "You've been tense," she said softly. "I want to do something special for you this year. Something unforgettable." "Sienna." She smiled into the mirror. I remember thinking that maybe we were okay again. The morning of my birthday, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "Sleep in. Don't check your phone. Trust me." I did. That trust was the last gift I ever gave her. When I woke up, the house was empty. The coffee pot was still warm, but the silence felt staged, like a set after the actors left. I waited, showered, checked the clock, and told myself it was a surprise. By noon, my optimism started to rot. By 3, I knew. At 5, I opened social media, and the photo hit me like a hammer. Here's to new beginnings. My family, my parents, my brother all smiling in front of my lake house. My house. And the caption beneath it. "He's used to being in the background anyway." The emoji stung worse than the words. I didn't scream. I didn't call. I just sat there, staring at the screen until my reflection merged with theirs, me alone in the living room, them surrounded by sunlight and laughter. In that moment, something inside me went still. All the years of swallowing pride, all the times I'd been told to be the bigger man, condensed into one clear thought: no more. The strange thing about breaking points is that they're silent. No explosion, no violence, just a quiet shift. Like the air changing before a storm. I got up, grabbed my wallet, my passport, and my truck keys. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't coming back the same man. As I locked the door behind me, the house creaked a small, tired sound, like it was exhaling for both of us. I looked once more at the life I built, the walls I'd painted, the photos I'd hung, the place I'd called home. Then I whispered something I'd never said before. "You win." But even then, I knew they hadn't. Not yet. The first 24 hours after I left home were a blur: airports, bad coffee, silence that tasted like metal. I flew to Montana because it was the first destination on the list that sounded far enough to breathe. The hotel was nothing special. A beige room with thin curtains and a heater that clicked every 5 minutes. But it was quiet. I sat on the bed, turned off my phone, and let the stillness settle around me. For the first time in years, nobody needed me. Nobody expected me to be reasonable, forgiving, or strong. When I finally turned my phone back on, it buzzed for almost a full minute: 17 missed calls, 12 texts, all from the same people who'd spent the days celebrating without me. "Lisa, no." Sienna was first. "Nathan, please answer. You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to be like that. Please come home. The kids are worried." Then Ryan. "Bro, chill. It was a misunderstanding. We were going to tell you." And then my father. "Whatever you're thinking, stop. Family is family." That line again. Family is family. The same shield they'd always used when I was the one bleeding. I didn't respond. I wanted them to feel what I had felt for 41 years' silence. The next morning, I found a small diner called Rusty Fork, tucked behind a gas station, the kind of place where time stands still. I ordered burnt coffee and eggs that tasted like cardboard and opened my laptop. Cole Benson, my oldest friend and business partner, was the first person I messaged. "Need a favor." "Quiet one," I wrote. He called within minutes. "Man, you sound like a ghost." "What happened?" "Check a company for me," I said. "Horizon Getaways LLC. Registered maybe in the last year." "Ryan's new toy?" He guessed. "He's been bragging about a lake business." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Check whose name's on the paperwork." There was a pause, the sound of keys clacking. Then a long exhale. "You're not gonna like this." "What?" "It's registered under Ryan Miller, but there's a co-signer. Sienna Miller. And the tax ID. That's your social security number, Nate." My stomach turned to ice. "You sure?" I'd stake my license on it. That was the moment the betrayal went from emotional to criminal. I closed the laptop, staring at the reflection in the diner. Window, tired eyes, 3 days beard. A man who'd been invisible so long he'd started to believe it was safer that way. Not anymore. Over the next few days, I retraced every step, every missing dollar, every quiet red flag I'd ignored. The account labeled household transfers. The property maintenance line items Sienna brushed off. Each one was another cut I hadn't noticed while it bled. By the end of the week, I'd mapped out the truth. For 8 months, they'd been using my property as a rental hub, collecting tens of thousands while routing taxes through my SSN. The perfect setup if the business collapsed. I'd be the one liable. I couldn't decide what hurt more, that they stole from me, or that they were so confident I'd never notice. Cole called again that Friday night. "You want to go to the cops?" "Not yet," I said. "They just spin it, make me look crazy." He paused. "Then what's your play?" I looked out at the Montana night, snow falling like static. "I'm not sure yet, but I'm done being the quiet one." That weekend, I started collecting everything: screenshots, account statements, IP logs from the property portal, messages I'd saved out of habit. The evidence was everywhere, hidden in plain sight. One file caught my eye: a booking confirmation for the lake house under a fake name, paid through Horizon's account. The guest check-in code matched one I'd received from Ben, the caretaker, months earlier. They hadn't even bothered to change the access. "Ben." I called him Sunday morning. "Hey, it's Nathan Miller," I said. There was a pause. Then his calm, steady voice. "I figured you'd call sooner or later." "You knew," I said. He hesitated. "I knew something was off. She told me you'd approved the rentals. Said it was part of a family venture. But when I saw the last group come in, they said it was an anniversary celebration for Ryan and Sienna. That didn't sit right." My grip on the phone tightened. "They used my house for that?" "I'm sorry, Nate," he said quietly. "If it helps, I kept the access logs. Every entry, every code, even the security camera timestamps. That helps more than you know." For the first time, I smiled, a cold, small smile that didn't reach my eyes. When I hung up, I looked out the window again. Snow was still falling, steady and slow, covering the tracks outside my cabin. It struck me how beautiful destruction could look from a distance. I didn't know exactly how I'd do it yet, but I knew one thing for sure. This time, I'd make the silence work for me. 3 days later, I was back in Seattle. I didn't go home, not yet. I rented a small apartment near the waterfront, the kind of place that smelled like old coffee and rain-soaked bricks. It was anonymous, and that's what I needed. From that room, I started digging deeper. Every night after work, I sat at the cheap wooden desk, cross-referencing emails, bank records, and online booking receipts. My laptop became a crime scene, every folder a confession waiting to be read. I found withdrawals that matched dates Sienna claimed she was visiting her sister, each one labeled property expenses. I followed the trail to Horizon's PayPal account and froze when I saw the transfers: $48,000 in 9 months. Split evenly between two recipients, Ryan Miller and Sienna Miller. The betrayal was arithmetic now. Cold. Simple. By the next morning, I had a new folder labeled Proof. Inside were screenshots, invoices, IP addresses, and copies of contracts signed with my tax ID. One line item stopped me: cold loan payment. Horizon Getaway's business expansion. A bank loan. Using my SSN. That's when I realized this wasn't just theft. If the company went under, I'd be the one the IRS came for. That evening, my phone buzzed again. It was Cole. "Still breathing?" he asked. "Barely." "I've got someone you should talk to," he said. "Her name's Ava Brooks. Corporate attorney. Smart, quiet, doesn't scare easy." I met Ava 2 days later at a downtown cafe. She was in her 30s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She didn't waste time. "Cole filled me in," she said, flipping open a folder. "If your brother and wife used your SSN, that's federal fraud. But if we move too early, they'll cover their tracks." "So we wait?" She nodded. "We build first. Patience is how you win wars like this." Patience, something I'd spent a lifetime learning for all the wrong reasons. For the next few weeks, Ava guided me through the quiet war. She showed me how to trace every transaction, how to request certified statements without alerting the other parties, how to use silence as pressure. The more evidence we gathered, the more the picture sharpened. Meanwhile, Sienna's messages shifted from pleading to panic. "Nathan, the bank called. Why are our accounts frozen? Ryan's saying you're trying to ruin him. Please, stop this before it gets out of control." I didn't reply. Then one night, around 2 a.m., She called from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was shaky. Nate, where are you? Please, I need to explain. Go ahead. It was Ryan's idea. The company, the house rentals, he said, you'd never use that place anyway. He promised we'd surprise you once it took off. I laughed softly. You surprised me? All right. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I didn't know he'd use your information. Stop lying, I said, calm but final. You signed the papers. Silence. Then a breath. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it'll be clean. When I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. For the first time, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I was focused. A week later, I went back to the house. My house. Mirror Point. The air smelled like pine and champagne remnants of their party. Empty glasses still on the counter, gold confetti in the corner. I walked through each room, remembering the years I spent building this place board by board. It wasn't just wood and nails. It was my piece. They'd turned it into a stage for betrayal. That's when I decided it was time to face them. The next morning, I parked across the street from our family home. Through the window, I saw Ryan's car in the driveway, the same one I'd co-signed for years ago when his credit was bad. Some things never changed. I walked to the door and unlocked it with my key. The laughter stopped immediately. Sienna's voice broke the silence first. Nathan. Ryan froze by the kitchen island, a glass of wine in hand. He tried to smile. Hey, man, you should have called. I looked at both of them, the people who'd built their comfort on my loyalty, and said quietly, don't say a word. Sienna started. We were going to tell you. Complicated. I interrupted. That's the word, right? Everything's complicated when you get caught. Ryan set the glass down, trying to keep his tone light. Come on, bro. It's just business. We were building something for the family. I smiled. Then you'll understand what an audit feels like. Their faces changed confusion, then fear. I handed Ryan a folder, thick and heavy. Every document, every transfer, every lie. Keep it, you'll need it when the IRS calls. He flipped through the first few pages. The color drained from his face. Where did you get this? From the same place you got my money. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. Nathan, please don't do this. Think of the kids. I looked at her, really looked at her. I am. Then I turned and walked out. Outside. The air was sharp, almost clean. My hands were steady. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the bigger man. I was just the man who'd finally stopped bleeding. The night I confronted them didn't end in shouting, it ended in silence. The kind that changes everything. I drove straight to the lake house again that evening. Mirror Point looked different under the moonlight, colder, emptier, almost like it knew what was coming. I parked the truck, walked up the steps, and unlocked the door with the master code Ben had given me years ago. Inside, the air was thick with stale perfume and the ghost of laughter. Champagne stains still marked the floorboards. The banner, "Here's to New Beginnings," drooped above the window. Letters half torn. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. I didn't come for closure. I came for evidence. On the kitchen counter, a laptop sat open, still logged into the Horizon Getaways dashboard. Bookings, payouts, emails. They hadn't even bothered to log out. I took photos of everything, the payment history, the transaction logs, even the client messages signed Ryan and Sienna. It was almost poetic, how carelessness always catches up to arrogance. Then headlights flashed across the driveway. A car door slammed. Voices carried through the night, hers first. Nate? Sienna's tone was wary, half hopeful, half afraid. Ryan followed behind her, still in his work jacket. Man, we need to talk. I didn't move. We already did. Ryan spread his arms. Look, I know how this looks. Stop. My voice came out calm, steady. You stole my name, my house, my birthday. What's next? My shadow? He scoffed. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? I pointed at the screen. Using my social security number for a business loan isn't a proportion, it's a felony. Sienna stepped forward, eyes glassy. We didn't mean for it to happen like this. I laughed softly. You meant something to happen. You just didn't think I'd notice. For a moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the clock, a steady reminder that time was running out for both of them. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, pretending to stay calm. All right, fine, we messed up, but we can fix it. Split the business 3 ways, call it even. Even? I repeated, taking a step closer. You want to negotiate your way out of stealing my life? He shrugged. It's business, bro. That word again, business. The same excuse that had justified every betrayal in my family. I pulled a thick folder from my coat and dropped it onto the counter. Then read your business plan. Ryan flipped it open. As the pages turned, the color drained from his face. Bank records, IP logs, transfer receipts, the loan paperwork with his forged signature of mine. Where did you get this? He whispered. From the same place you got my money, I said quietly. Sienna's voice trembled. Nathan, please, don't do this. The kids. The kids deserve to know who you really are, I said. You built your comfort on their father's back. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was lost, okay? Ryan said you'd never use this house, that you didn't care about it. He said. I know what he said. I cut her off. And you believed him, because it was easier than believing in me. She covered her face, shoulders shaking. Ryan stepped forward, jaw tightening. Enough, man. You made your point. Not yet. I reached for my phone, opened an app, and pressed play. From the small speaker came a recording the audio bin had given me from the smart lock camera. Ryan's voice first. He'll never find out. He's too busy playing Mr. Fix-It. Then Sienna's. If he does, I'll say it was your idea. Laughter. Glasses clinking. When it ended, the silence was surgical. Sienna lowered her hands slowly, face pale. You recorded us? No, I said. You recorded yourselves. You just didn't know who the house really belonged to anymore. Ryan's eyes darted to the door. You can't use that. It's not admissible. Don't worry, I said, slipping the phone back into my pocket. It's not for court. It's for history. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. Not guilt fear, the kind that comes when someone realizes they've finally met a version of you that no longer needs approval. I turned to leave, but stopped at the doorway. You'll hear from my lawyer soon, I said. Ava Brooks. You'll like her, she believes in accountability. Ryan laughed nervously. Come on, man, we can fix this. I looked back over my shoulder. You can't fix what you never built. And then I walked out. The night air hit me like ice, but it felt clean, honest. Behind me, the house glowed in the dark, a hollow shell of everything I'd tried to make sacred. As I drove away, my phone buzzed again. Ava's name lit the screen. Everything in place? She asked. Everything, I said. Then we start tomorrow. What do I owe you? Just the truth, she said. And patience. When I hung up, I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. For years, I'd been the man who kept the peace, who fixed the leaks, who patched the walls while everyone else broke them. But now, the walls were gone, and for the first time, the space around me didn't feel empty. It felt free. I parked near the overlook above Mirror Point. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, calm and endless. Somewhere down there, my family was unraveling, still trying to figure out how I'd gotten ahead of them. They didn't know that I'd moved the deed months ago, that the house, the accounts, even the land beneath their feet already belonged to a holding company under my name. They thought they'd destroyed me, but they just handed me the perfect weapon. As the wind rippled across the water, I whispered to no one, it's my turn. And for the first time in my life, the silence didn't hurt. It roared. I didn't go home that night. I didn't even check into a motel. I just drove aimlessly until the road stretched into darkness, and my reflection disappeared from the windshield. Somewhere around midnight, I pulled over by the highway, rolled down the window, and let the cold air sting my face. I thought about every time I'd been told to be the bigger man. Every time I'd swallowed my pride, so someone else could keep their peace. That version of me died at Mirror Point. The next morning, I met Ava at her office, a corner space overlooking the harbor. She didn't waste time with sympathy. She slid a folder across the table. The freeze orders are ready. Bank accounts, joint lines, shared cards. They won't see it coming. I nodded. And Horizon? She smiled faintly. Already under review. The IRS flagged the duplicate SSN. You're clean. They're not. For the first time, I exhaled. A long, steady breath, like oxygen after years underwater. Over the next few days, I moved like a ghost through the city. Closed accounts, canceled cards, changed passwords. Every alert that hit my phone was another chain breaking loose. Then came the message from Ben. Thought you'd want to see this. It was a short video clip Laura Dean, Sienna's blogger friend, had posted a behind-the-scenes vlog from the launch party. The camera panned across the lake house, and for a split second, it caught the corner of a document with Horizon's logo and my forged signature. The internet did what it always does. It spread. Fast. Within hours, the post had thousands of views, hundreds of comments. Some people joked. Others speculated. But anyone who knew me or knew them could read between the lines. I didn't say a word. I didn't post, didn't text, didn't gloat. Silence was the loudest confession they'd ever hear. That evening, I stood at the dock, the lake black and glassy beneath the winter sky. My reflection stared back steadier, colder, alive in a way I hadn't been for years. They thought they'd buried me under humiliation and paperwork, but all they did was hand me the blueprint for their own collapse. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed a message from Ava. "It's starting." I smiled, slipped the phone into my pocket, and whispered, "Good. Let's build." If you've ever been the quiet one, the one everyone underestimated, the one told to let it go, you know how it feels when silence finally turns sharp. They thought I'd fade into the background. They thought my calm meant weakness. But sometimes, peace isn't forgiveness, it's distance. I built my own life from the ashes of their lies, and I'm not done yet. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe. Because this story isn't over. The reckoning has just begun.